Tonight, the Red Lanterns visit Earth and are immediately overwhelmed by the rage of all New Yorkers. Justice League introduces the Doom Patrol and, by extension, the biggest prick in the DC universe. And Harley Quinn flings literal bag of feces against DC's home office. No notes on that one, perfect writing. All that and more tonight on the Not-So-New 52. Hello everyone and welcome to episode 152 of the Not-So-New 52. I am your host, and 152, can you believe it? It has been 100 episodes since the end of season 1. Season 1 ended on episode 52, which itself was a 5th week, as is this week, and it's been 100 episodes since then. You know, I know that the audience for this and the audience for things like sports, if I were to make a Venn diagram, are pretty much two completely separate circles. But I do want to point out something that I've noticed in a lot of sports, like broadcasting. This may not be worldwide, but it's at least US and definitely in football. And that is, whenever a player does something and they want to like bring up his stats screen or whatever, they always bring up a way that he's first in something, no matter how like weird and obtuse the category is. So like, there's John Jenkins running the ball. He gets a touchdown. Let's bring up John Jenkins stuff. And it shows that he's like the number one touchdown scorer for people who are left-handed and were also born on a Wednesday. Obviously not actually that obtuse, but pretty damn close most of the time. And I always just wonder, like, that's such an odd clarification. That's such a strange little, like, okay, maybe that's technically true, but does it really help to know that much specificity? All of that complete tangent, suffice to say that saying that this is 100 episodes since the end of season 1, is that technically true? Yes. Does that level of specificity actually help you or help you appreciate at all what I'm doing here? No, of course not. Let's talk about comics. So, as I kind of glossed over at the beginning, this is a 5th week. And for those of you who've only been watching the show for a little bit, 5th weeks are where DC decides we're not going to put out as many books. We're going to put out significantly fewer books. We're going to put out some annuals. We're going to let Geoff Johns catch up on whatever sort of schedule he's let slip. And then we're going to just make it a smaller week. However, on this show, in addition to covering those books, I also cover any backup stories that have been happening since the last 5th week. And there's not a lot. So regardless, this is going to be a shorter episode than usual. Probably. I don't actually know until I go to edit it, but it feels shorter. It just has that vibe. So let me tell you the comics that are coming out, and then I will say exactly what's special about them. So in terms of annuals coming out this week, we have the first annual for Red Lanterns, the second annual for Aquaman, and the third annual for Detective Comics. In terms of regular comics, we have Harley Quinn, Sinestro, and Justice League. And then, of course, we have our 2 weeklies, which never take a break, and that is Batman Eternal and Future's End. And then, obviously, as I said, we have backups. But unlike pretty much every other time where I've had at least 2 backups to talk about, this one I've only got one. There was only one backup that showed up in 2 issues of All-Star Western, and that is for Madam 44. So, I guess I'm talking about that as well. And I don't know if that's enough to fill an episode, but I'm going to do it. Also, just so you're aware, for anybody who has been around for a while, usually I'll do a thing where I do like all of the normal comics, a little brief interstitial to say, hey, everybody, I'm rolling into the backups, and then I do the backups. But because there's only one, that interstitial would take too much work, and I don't want to do it. So once I'm done with the normal comics, I'm just going to talk about that one, just lead right into it, and it's your fault if you don't bail out in time. Though I would suggest you listen to it, because Madam 44, The Other Side, has deep ramifications for the entire DC multiverse and is critical to your understanding of everything. completely. So yeah, definitely stay tuned for that. Obviously I'm being facetious, but let's go ahead and jump right on into this week's comics. And I think I'm going to lead off with, let's go with an annual first. Let's check out Detective Comics. Detective Comics Annual Number 3, written by Brian Buccellato, art by Jorge Fornés, Scott Hepburn, and Werther Dell'Edera. Hopefully I'm saying that right. So this is basically a, as far as I could tell, prologue to all of the Icarus stuff that's currently going on in Detective Comics. And it's just kind of bouncing around different things, showing like how everything's all interconnected. And honestly, I think it does a great job of like informing things that I find confusing in the run. So we open up on October 9th, 6:45. I'm not going to say the times for all of them. I'll just say earlier, later. It's up to you to figure that out. And we see Bruce Wayne with like his little mesh thing. He turns into Matches Malone as a disguise. And the guy opens up the bathroom door. And turns out it's Julian Day, who everyone will know as Calendar Man. But he's not Calendar Man yet. This is a Calendar Man origin. So Matches calls him out just like, oh, Julian Day. And Julian's just like, oh, what? Did I sleep with your woman? Did I beat up your friend? Like, what's up? What do you want? And we just see Matches rolling up his sleeves. And he's like, all right, we're going to fight about it. You're not even going to tell me what it is? And he's like, nope. So we cut to earlier. And we hear that there is a gang called the Bastards of Blackgate who have some hostages, the mercenaries, and they are holding off the neighborhood down in the Narrows. And Batman's like, well, the cops aren't going to go to that, so I guess I'll go take care of it. We go to a self-storage facility where there is a guy named Dante, who I believe is with that group. And all the other members of the group are like, hey, we got to go take care of something. You're going to stay here and watch our shipment. And it's of Icarus. It's the drugs. And Dante's like, oh, man, I used to be on that stuff, but I'm not anymore. But, like, you sure you guys want to leave me alone with this? And he's just like, yeah, nah, whatever. Like, whatever we got going on elsewhere is much more important. So we're leaving this to you. Don't use the drugs. And he's like, of course I won't. So he almost immediately opens up a box of drugs, but he doesn't seem like he's doing it. But then his phone goes off. And it turns out, well, actually, we don't know who it is. So on the other end is a woman who's saying, like, hey, are you ready? We can go. Like, I'm all packed up. Let's go now. And he's like, oh, I can't right now. Something important came up. And she's like, oh, are you sure you still want to do this? So, you know, leave with me? And he's like, of course, I can't imagine a world without you. As we see him with a syringe in his hands. So some other time earlier, I guess, we see a stretch Hummer with Squid and his brother talking to Julian Day. And Squid is basically like, hey, Julian, you're going to take the place of my brother because he's incompetent and he's stupid and I don't think he can handle this. And the brother's like, dude, I'm right here. And Julian's like, oh, what, you think we just need to smack him around, maybe work some sense to him? And the brother's like, dude, I'm right here. So at that point, his brother tells him, like, look, I don't trust you. You need to grow up. I've babied you for too long. You listen to Julian now. He runs everything in terms of like the Icarus side of stuff. So Julian and him get out of the car, and Julian's like, hey, let's go get a drink. And the brother's like, I'm not thirsty. He's like, tough, we're getting a drink. So they go into a bar, and Julian just starts dressing them down. He's just like, all right, look, you know why you suck? You know why you don't matter? It's because you don't have any cred. You don't have a reputation. Your brother's name is the Squid. In Gotham, cities like Gotham, you hear about the Joker, the Riddler, the Penguin, all those guys. They got names. You don't have a name, and so therefore you are nothing. And the brother's just like, oh yeah, and your name's freaking Julian. Like, I don't think anybody's going to respect the Julian. And so then Julian just punches him in the stomach and says, all right, I got to go to the bathroom. So down in the Narrows earlier, I've completely lost track already. We see Batman's beating up a bunch of goons from the Bastards of Blackgate. And he's basically like, look, you guys have this big stash of weapons. That's what I'm looking for, but this ain't all of it. So who's going to tell me where the rest are? And everyone's just kind of looking around, like not willing to say anything. Batman's like, I know none of you actually went to Blackgate. Like, you all are just taking that name to seem tough. So someone's going to tell me what's up before I send you there for real. And one of the guys is like, what do we get in return? And he's like, nothing. I don't beat you up anymore. And then all of a sudden, there's this kid up on a balcony who says like, ooh, I know. Hey, Mr. Batman. his name is Aiden, and he's like, yeah, these men, they're talking all the time out here. They don't know I'm listening, but I know exactly what they're saying. And Batman's like, all right, cool, kid. You like Batman? You think I'm cool? And he's like, yeah, Batman, you're the coolest. If I tell you what it is, can you give me a Batarang? He's like, maybe. So he basically says, yeah, the guns, they were shooting stuff at the salt yard. That's where it's at. And Batman notices that his shoes are covered in like salt residue. And he's like, so you went and followed them? Why would you follow them? Did you want to get a gun? And Aiden's like, please don't tell my dad. And he's like, oh, is your dad beating you? Is that what's going on? And he notices some bruises. And Aiden's just like, yeah, and he also forgot my birthday's today. So simultaneously much earlier, I think it's the day before, we see Dante and Elena Annette. Elena's the mom. Dante and Annette are dirt biking together. Apparently they're dating. Annette shows how much better she is at it. And Dante's like, yeah, all right, I promise you're the best. So they kiss, and then Dante's like, your mom's not going to let us be together because she thinks that I'm just the junkie who got her daughter addicted to drugs, but like, even though I'm clean now and you're clean now, she still thinks that like I'm a bad influence. And she's like, well, what do you want me to do? And he's like, let's run away together. Let's go back to New York. Gotham sucks. Let's get out of here. And she's like, oh, but I can. He's like, oh, yes, you can. We'll go. I got a thing tonight. I'll get some money, and then we can just go on and do our own thing. Let's leave. So we cut back to the bathroom scene. Julian's getting beaten up by Bruce dressed as matches, but Julian's just like, why? What did I do, man? Why are you you're beating me up? You're not even telling me why. And he's just like, do you remember what today is? Do you know what today is? And it turns out that Aiden is the son of Julian Day, and Bruce is beating him up, A, because he's an abusive father, but B, because he also forgot about Julian's birthday, and because of his own, like, losing his son things. He's just like wailing on him, punching him in the face, smacking the tile, being like, you're supposed to be his father, you're supposed to protect him, not hurt him. You gotta go out and buy a calendar so you don't ever forget again. And then he just walks off. The brother goes out and sees that Julian is just mumbling to himself in a concussion, saying like, gotta buy a calendar. So he gets on his phone and he's like, hey, we need a crew together now, we're gonna get some money. So we go to the salt yards, where it looks like the Bastards of Blackgate are all hanging out, and we see Batman is planting dynamite around the place without being noticed, and then all of a sudden he goes in and attacks the gang, and he's like, hey guys, I know what you're doing here, I want the rest of your guns, so tell me where they're at. And they of course start firing on Batman. He sets off the dynamite and it just completely buries them in salt. So he's like, all right, well, that's taken care of. Alfred, see if all the rest of the guns are here, and if not, if we can get any more info. And Alfred's like, oh, did you also go to a bar and beat someone else up? And he's like, maybe. So we then cut over to Annette's view of that call from earlier saying, hey, you want to go and let's do that. And Dante is just basically saying like, hey, I have to do this. I have to stay. I can't go with you right now. But like, I swear, as soon as I'm out of here, I can do it. But like, I need help. I can't do this alone. And Annette's like, what are you talking about? What is going on? And we see that he hears like some noises outside. He's got a gun, but he knows that there are people coming here for the drugs. So Annette's like, hey, whatever's going on, get out of there now. Like, it's not worth your life. Just go. And so he pulls up the gun as people are outside and he hears gunshots. And he's like, I just need a little help. All I need is a little help. And he goes and gets some Icarus. So the brother comes in and opens up the storage container, and he's like, oh yeah, my brother thinks that I can handle myself. Let's see what he says after he loses out on this shipment. So he opens up the storage unit door, and out comes Dante on fire. He's taken an overdose of the drugs. They shoot him down, and he's just dead. So inside the room, as they start gathering up all the drugs they can, they see Annette is still trying to call back on the phone, and then sitting at home, she's just crying, miserable. So we go up to the meetup spot where Squid and the Bastards of Blackgate are meeting up, because that was mentioned earlier on that meeting was happening. And Squid's just like, yo man, you stole all my stuff. Or sorry, no, the Blackgate ones are like, yo man, you stole all my stuff. Like, we just got the thing that like all the stuff's been stolen, and you were the only one who knew where it was. And Squid's just like, it wasn't me. I swear to God, it wasn't me. And I'm going to make sure that we're good together. I want to do this business. And he's like, all right, whatever, man. But like, you were the only one who knew. So we're going to have problems. And then we see the brother is there. And he's like, man, it must have been Julian. He had a drink with me and then he just left. And I should have called you right away. I guess you shouldn't have trusted Julian over me. Right, brother? And Squid's like, yeah, totally, whatever. So he apparently is calling in this dude with like a skull mask, and he says that Julian Day is calling, and he's like, yeah, oh, he got our note, cool. So then we cut back to Calendar Man's apartment because he is checking in on Aiden, but the entire apartment has been flipped over. The kid's gone, everything's ruined, and we see there's a note in there saying, Julian Day, we have your son. If you want him alive, come to this place. So Bastards of Blackgate have kidnapped the son in hopes of getting the Icarus back because the one brother framed Julian. So obviously he didn't. So Julian just skipped town. He didn't care. He didn't give a damn about his son. So down at the salt yard, we see them like taunting the boy, threatening him, and then out in the distance you hear the like, let my son go, and it's like, oh, Julian must be here, cool. And you see just this massive figure busting down the yard, and it's like, wait a minute, hold on, who the hell is this? And it turns out it's Batman in like armor, like he's got a full mech suit thing going on, Iron Man 1 style, and they unleash fire. It's not doing anything. He just obliterates some of these guys. Meanwhile, the main dude in charge is like, it's Batman, and you see Aiden just being like, you're screwed now. So Batman goes through, kicks all the other goons' butts, and it's only the leader left out. And he's got a big-ass magnetic railgun, because remember, they also stole all those guns. And he's like, I'm going to shoot this kid if you don't back off. And your suit's falling apart, and I don't think you can handle a shot from this either. He's like, want to bet? So Batman then activates an EMP. It fries the technology in the gun, and there's nothing he can do. And as Batman approaches, the guy's just like, I give up. You win. We're done. So all the Bastards of Blackgate get taken away to jail. Batman turns to Aiden, and he's like, hey, I'm going to take you somewhere that you're going to be okay. And he takes him to the Aguila family shelter for women and children, hosted by Elaine, obviously, and introduces her to the foster system. And we see in Aiden's back pocket is a Batarang. So, yeah, it's a good story. It's fine. I really think that this actually helps me understand a little bit in terms of the dynamics and like reasons that characters do certain things, because that's been my complaint for a lot of the arc that's been going on and just the numbered issues, is that it feels like there's been a reveal that's just been sitting elsewhere as to like how these characters are all interrelated. And this is it. This is what I wanted from the beginning, and it's going to make reading the last issue of that arc a hell of a lot more easy on me. So, no, it's a solid written book. I think art-wise, it's also great. I'd say my only main critique is the fact that it relies on you having the previous arc already in your mind and knowing what's going on there. And because that's a little bit confusing for me, there's things like Squid's brother that like, they may have said his name once in this issue, but I don't have him registered as a character, as a player. He's just the leader's brother. So yeah, I'm going to give this one I'll give it a solid 8. It's very good. I think it would have been better used on an arc I cared more about, but it's still a very solid book regardless. Harley Quinn number 8, written by Amanda Connor and Jimmy Palmiotti, art by Chad Hardin. So, last issue, honest to God, it was a Poison Ivy thing, but it doesn't even really apply at all to this, except that Harley's bounty on her head has been removed. So this issue picks up in a pawn shop where Harley is trying to pawn off the rings that she got from the rich lady that was killed in the thing with Cyborgman. Don't worry about it. Point being is that she's at a pawn shop trying to hawk some stolen stuff. The guy there is like, okay, well, I got good news and bad news. And it's like, give me the good news. And it's like, well, this is all highly valuable stuff. It's all real. It's like 240 grand. And it's like, holy, that's a lot. Yeah, so what's the bad news? And it's like, well, it's all been reported stolen, so I can only give you 80 grand for it. And Harley's like, hold on, I'm going to negotiate with them. And then all of a sudden, 2 armed robbers bust in and just like, give us all the money. But Harley's like, okay, now how about 150 grand? And I can get you some more on top of this. And he's like, lady, we're being robbed. And the robbers are like, yeah, we're robbing you. Put your hands in the air. And she's like, okay, how about this? 140 grand. And then I also take care of these guys for you. And he's like, if you can take care of these guys for me, I got a samurai sword, an authentic Hanzo in the back. You can have that. There is a lot of Quentin Tarantino references in this book. I don't know why. But regardless, she's like, all right, sounds good. So we cut slightly ahead, and there's one guy with like 7 knives in his back, and then she's just choking out the other one. And she's saying like, oh, could I have the sword for this one? And he's like, yeah, sure, I'll go in the back, no problem. So as she's choking this guy out, is just like, hey, what's your name? And he's like, oh, it's Ralph. My partner's name was Zed. And she's like, oh, well, Zed's dead, so you better give me a reason to not kill you. And he gives this long sob story of he was an orphan and he had a kitten that was killed by his 8 brothers and sisters. And then it was named Pickles. And then she was picked on in school. And then like he was sent to jail on a wrongful accusation, all this stuff. And Harley's just sobbing, just like, that's the most tragic backstory I've ever heard. And then Tony reaches into his back pocket, pulls out his wallet and be like, actually, his name is Randy and he's the son of like a politician. He's super rich. He's none of that's true. And she's just like, all right, sword time. So we then cut out to a diner where her and Tony are having some spaghetti. And Harley's basically like, hey, use whatever money you need in order to finish up that project I have you building up on the roof. But I got to go to the roller derby team or else they're going to fire me. And he's like, why? You don't need the money anymore. We've got like 100 grand in this pocket, no problem. She's like, yeah, but I still enjoy doing it. So we cut down to the roller derby where we see that everyone on the team's got a nickname. I'm not going to say them all, but Harley's is Killer Quinn. And she's like, well, it's Killer Quinn. That sucks. Why would you name me that? And she's like, well, because you wouldn't pick up your phone and I needed to send these to the printer. We can change it later. Anyway, let's get out there. So they get out on the roller derby rink and Harley's just knocking people over. Just not like taking them all out. She's doing great. And we see one of the opponents on the team is talking to this huge, massive woman named Bertha. And she's like, hey, Bertha, you see that one over there? Go get her. And she's like, I will kill her. She's like, no, okay, don't kill her. But like, just get her out of there. So she comes in. She takes out the whole rest of Harley's team. Beelines it for Harley. And before Harley can even react, Bertha just uppercuts her in the face and sends her out into the crowd. So Harley gets knocked out. She's dragged back to the back room. And as the other girls are like, you should like go to the doctor or something, or like the dentist, because Harley pulls out a tooth. And she's like, that was my favorite tooth. And Harley's just like, nah, man, screw this. I'm getting revenge. So she starts rooting through her closet. And the team captain's just like, hey, we don't do that. The league will not allow it. You just have to take this and leave. And she's like, that's not how I roll. She's like, if you go out there, you're off the team. She's like, so be it. So she grabs her mallet, heads back out there. She asks her teammate where Bertha is, and it's like, oh, she's been sidelined because she clearly committed a foul. And she's like, good, send me in her direction. So they slingshot her forward with the mallet, and it just goes like straight into Bertha's chest, knocks her on her back. And as Bertha's down, Harley just brings the mallet down over and over and over. And the crowd looking on is horrified to the point where they have to run out of the building because they're like, I'm going to be sick. This is disgusting. So the captain eventually steps in and says, hey, you're off the team. The league's not going to let me do anything for you, but I want you to take this card. You didn't get it from me. It's for a skate club where I think you might fit in a little bit better. Okay? And, first rule of skate club is do not talk about skate club. So that's basically the end of that plot. And then we go to the next day where Harley is walking up to the roof where all of her tenants of her building are there. And she's like, hey, everyone. Here's the deal. So you know how I have a whole bunch of dogs that have been out just running around the compound, and they make a lot of poop. I don't have any idea what to do with all this poop. Until today, I had Tony build a giant catapult, and she unveils it on the roof, and she's like, we have taken these massive trash bags full of poo and set them on the catapult, and we'll send them flying wherever we want, and it won't be our problem. And everyone's like, this is weird, but okay. So Tony gets in, and it's got like this whole like GPS positioning stuff going on. They load one up, and they're trying to get it out into Staten Island, or not Staten Island, into a park on Staten Island. And so they fling it out. It ends up hitting a bridge, and it's just like, oops, all right, that's way off. Let's recalibrate. So they go again. It ends up hitting a roller coaster on Coney Island, and it's just like, all right, well, that's more disgusting. A bunch of people are just leaving off the roof now because they don't want any part of this. There's one guy who's like, hey, a couple of guys made fun of us on the J train the other day. You think you can hit a moving target? And he's like, yeah, of course I can. So they end up hitting the subway train with a bag of it. And it's just like, all right, hold on. I've got an idea. Why don't we take all of this and see how much we can throw at once? And so they load it up with like 4 or 5 bags, everything they've got left, and they prep it for launch. We cut to DC's headquarters, where Dan DiDio is in front of the boardroom saying, all right, everybody, this is a top secret meeting. We're going to relaunch all the DC titles, and here's what we're going to do. Zebraman has Zatanna convert everybody into like wildebeests and antelopes, and we will call it the New 52, spelled GNU. And he asks what everybody thinks, and that's when all of the bags just explode on the windows, and it's gross. So at that point, we see, they're out of ammo. Harley's like, oh, okay, I'll just go downstairs and get some more. So she goes out into the backyard and with a shovel, just ready to start scooping up poop. And then all of a sudden, there's a guy there who has a knife to a kitten. And it's like, all right, Harley, you're going to come with me or this cat's going to get it. And she's like, bro, the bounty's off my head. You're not going to get anything for it. He's like, I don't believe that. So come on, let's go. And all of a sudden, the one guy who's doing all the loading up on the slingshot named Mario picks this guy up by the throat, just like, is this guy bothering you? And just like, yes, he is. So then Harley attacks him with the shovel, ties him up, puts him on the catapult, and fires away, to which point he hits a blimp, bounces off, and lands in the propellers of a biplane, which has a banner on the back saying, Robert's Ketchup, Cubert's Ketchup, delicious with everything. And that's enough to put a few of them off of their meals. So that's it for that. And then we get one final page of epilogue of a random guy with white hair watching Harley through some binoculars. He's on top of a train, and a cop is threatening him, saying, like, get down on the ground. And he's like, we're not on the ground. He's like, all right, get down on the train. And then this guy throws the binoculars at the cop. He goes down as he's being beat up. And then the guy steals the cop's outfit, saying, like, oh, your alabaster hands will never have to scoop another poop as long as you live. So he's clearly got a thing for Harley. Who is he? I don't know. It's not a bad issue. I want to make that clear. I actually thought some of the jokes were pretty funny, but it's 2 issues. There's all the stuff related to the poop flinging, and then there's all the stuff in the first half related to the roller derby and all the money making and stuff like that. 2 totally separate parts, which I guess I would rather that rather than you try to stretch out one plot longer than you have story to tell it. But it's still weird how there's absolutely no linking there. Yeah, beyond that, it's okay. I think it's a fine issue. I'm going to go ahead and just say I'm going to give it a 7. I think it's a 6.5, except that I really like when they make fun of the DC head office ones. I just like that sort of meta joke sort of stuff. Especially because one of them, I think it's Jim Lee, has on a baseball cap that has New York on it, and then it's crossed out to say LA. And mind you, this is like a full year before they actually moved to the LA offices. So I feel like no one's reading this book in editorial, and they're just letting Amanda Conner and Jimmy Palmiotti leak company secrets in this book without anybody knowing. So yeah, that's that. It's a 7 though. It's a perfectly okay book. Just it's going to be dependent on your tastes, I guess. Red Lantern's Annual Number 1, written by Charles Soule, art by Miguel Sepulveda. So this is the next part of the Atrocities arc. This is not skippable by any means of the imagination. Last issue we had Scalix seemingly betraying guys part of the Red Lantern Corps over to Atrocitus' side, and Atrocitus made 200 more rings, somewhere in that ballpark. It's a lot. But this issue picks up with Earth, And we see a Red Lantern talking about it. Turns out it's Atrocitus, and he's like, man, this planet seems to be at the center of a whole lot of stuff. But you know what I don't like about it? It's not angry enough. We got to make it more angry, all right? Scalix, hey, you've been down there before. Guy Gardner's brought you there. What's up with it? And he's just like, yeah, no, guys sent me to, like, I don't know, a place called Paris that has, like, a giant spike in it. And then, like, they sent me to a canyon that's supposedly grand, but, like, it was stupid, and I hated every second of it. And then Atrocitus just, like, grabs him, just be like, okay, but do you know where Guy Gardner lives? Like, tell me you know exactly where he lives. And he's like, yeah, it's a place called Baltimore. And Atrocitus is like, all right, Baltimore. Dexter and 2 of the other new Red Lanterns I made, go down there and cause havoc, just mess up everything. And Dexter, I swear to God, don't you mess around. Don't you try to get with any female cats. He actually says that. And Dexter looks upset, just like, fine, whatever. So we see chaos just around the world, specifically major monuments and, like, buildings and stuff like that. We got Baltimore, Paris, Arizona, Egypt, Nevada, China, Spain, all these major things just completely destroyed by Red Lanterns. And Atrocitus is like, all right, that's good. All right, now time to do the main thing. And so he appears as a giant hologram in front of each of the different populations of Earth, and he's like, hey, everyone, I just destroyed all your stuff. It's gone. All of your most important landmarks destroyed and gone. Doesn't that make you angry? Doesn't that make you, aren't you pissed off? Don't you want to do something about that anger? Here you go. And we see that one of the other Red Lanterns that Atrocitus has just regurgitates the hundreds of Red Lantern rings that immediately go down to the planet and start locking onto people with rage. And they all start becoming Red Lanterns and just start, like, zipping around everywhere. And Scalix is like, all right, so what do we do now? He's just like, oh, no, we're just going to wait. Guy Gardner's going to show up, like, pretty soon, and then that's just going to be the whole thing. It's all part of the plan. So we see flying through space on the Calvar is Guy. They've got a big old red dot showing up right where Earth is, and Guy's like, yeah, I figured Atrocitus would attack there. Whatever, let's just see what he's doing. So Zilius zooms in, and immediately Guy's like, oh my God. Okay, look, I never quite understood why you Red Lanterns were so obsessed with revenge. Like, I never got it. I just got it. Get me to Earth now. So we start seeing, like, explosions and fires and stuff all around the Earth, and everyone's just like, all right, well, they're doing pretty good down there. That's great. And Scalix is like, hey, Atrocitus, there's a woman down there who I kind of got the hots for. She's super powerful. Can I go down there and make sure that she has a ring? Because I think she'd be of great use to us. And Atrocitus is like, are you going to betray me again, dude? And he's like, what? No, I swear to God, no. He's just like, I don't even care if you do. You are absolutely worthless. Go, whatever. It doesn't matter to me. Meanwhile, on Calvar, we see Rancor is inside of his little cell. Bleez comes up, and he's still crazy. And Bleez is like, hey, man, I don't know how to save you. Guy Gardner's got a plan on what we're going to do when we get to Earth. Hopefully I can save your planet. I just want you to know I'm going to try to at least do that, Rancor. Peace. So we go down to Gotham, where a guy has already made his way down. He talks to Batman, and Batman's like, is this yours? Did you do this? And he's like, I didn't do this. I might be responsible for this, but I didn't do this. And Batman's like, dude, I swear to God, what's going on? What should we do here? And he's like, look, you just have to contain them. You just, like, you don't have to, like, kill them or anything. And Batman's like, you don't know anything about me. I don't kill people. So yes, I will do my best to contain them. But Jesus, man, like, get a hold of yourself. And there's a panel in here I need to call out where Guy's like, hey, I'm not here to fight you. I don't have time. And Batman says, really? I think it would just take one punch. And Guy goes, not in this universe. For those of you unaware, just look up Guy Gardner One Punch. Anyway. Guy flies off and he's like, I got this. And Batman's like, I don't think you're trying to convince me of that, buddy. So then we cut to Jerusalem, where it turns out that Scalix, we thought he was talking about Supergirl, because Supergirl was obviously a Red Lantern. Turns out, nah, he was super into Shadow Thief, which I vaguely remember from, like, a much earlier issue. And Shadow Thief did get a Red Lantern ring. He punches her upside the face and knocks her out. And then he's just like, all right, let's get out of here. So over in New York, there's a Red Lantern about to attack a bus. Supergirl swoops in, and of course she's been cured of her Red Lanternness over in her book. And she picks one up, and she's like, all right, I've been in your shoes, buddy. I'm going to help you. Guy stops her as she's flying, and he's just like, hey, just drop him to the ground. He doesn't know how to fly yet, but the ring will make sure he's just knocked out, not killed. And she's like, all right, drops him off. And she's like, all right, dude, like, is that Atrocitus? I saw the hologram with him. Is everything cool? And he's just like, yeah. Hey, how did you get your ring off? And she's like, it's a whole thing. Like, maybe I could teach you how to do it. And he's like, later, I at least have to finish out this arc. Anyway, I just need you to help me out a little bit, okay? So we then go back up to the Calvar, and it seems that Guy went on with his own thing, and Zilius is back on the ship, and he went over to Stige Prime, which is of course the planet where Atrocitus has set up his new base, and Zilius is like, all right, you poisoned my blood lake on my planet, now I'm going to mess up yours. And so he just fires down tons of lasers down on the blood lake. We see some of the Red Lanterns that were left behind. There's just 3 of them, and they are the pirates who originally had the Calvar, the ship. They were the original owners. I think Blarg is the main one's name. So they start flying up, and it's just like, all right, guys, we can handle this. 3 of us. And then one of them just gets incinerated. And he's like, all right, 2 of us. Okay, maybe we can't do this. And Blarg is just like, oh, come on, you coward. We got to get up there. That's my ship. We're going to go up there. And he's like, why? How? It's only 2 of us. And he's like, don't be so sure. So we cut back up to the ship. Rancor gets up to his feet, and we see him talking on a communicator to Blarg. And he's like, oh, thank God you finally got back to me. I was so tired of having to pretend to be crazy. So he gets out of the cell. Blarg instructs him to deactivate the weapon system and, like, try not to kill everybody up there. And Rancor's like, no promises. So we cut back over to Earth, where we see that Bleez has had a deal with one of the previous planets the Red Lanterns went to. I think they were called, like, the Core somethings. I don't know. Regardless. Core Moraki. Basically, they were the planet that had the ability to pacify the Red Lanterns, and therefore they got the ship to show up to Earth. They fired down their pacification beam, and all the Red Lanterns just chill out. They just relax, and it's affecting the whole planet. And Bleez is like, awesome. It's smart of Guy to remember we had this connection. And then Atrocitus just busts in through the side of the ship, being like, all right, kill them all. So back over on Stige Prime, we see the entire ship starts just like tearing itself apart, and that's because of Rancor just messing stuff up. And Zilius is like, how, man? What's going on? You're back? And he's just like, not exactly. And then Zilius gets all pissed off. He gets powered up. He flies over to Rancor, and Rancor just punches through his head. He is super not okay. And we see Zilius just bleeding out on the ground. Meanwhile, with Atrocitus, Bleez has been captured, and he's just like, Bleez, you would have been excited just a few months ago to see all these new Red Lanterns. What happened to you, man? She's like, that Bleez is dead, and I don't mourn her loss. And Atrocitus is like, all right, whatever. Dexter, do you want to, like, skin Bleez alive? Does that sound good? And he's just like, yeah. But then all of a sudden, Dexter gets hit with a beam. Turns out it's Guy and Supergirl saving Bleez. And Atrocitus facing down against all of them is like, all right, and then just uses the lantern ring to disappear, teleport away. So they go to patch up the ship so that they can keep Earth pacified, keep everything going there, and see what they can do. Meanwhile, Rancor tells Blarg it's safe to come up to the ship, but then all of a sudden he takes his own ring, aims it at his face, and starts saying, like, oh, don't start with this. You can't fight against me. But then he shoves his fist into his mouth and pulls out a giant centipede leech-looking thing, saying, like, put me back. We were good as a team. Come on, buddy. You could feel it. And then Rancor just tears him in half. And it turns out this thing was a mind control thing that Atrocitus put inside of him in order to control Rancor for exactly this purpose. So its ring goes to fly off. Rancor grabs it, just being like, nope, puts it on his finger. Goes over to Zilius, be like, hey, man, I wasn't in control of myself. I'm so sorry I killed you. And he's like, don't worry about it, man. It's all good. You're cool. He's like, could I take you to the medical base? Like, nah, I'm going to die now. But, hey, go help out Guy Gardner and let him know he's not such a bad guy. I think that he forgets that sometimes. So we go over to Bleez. Bleez is just kicking ass of a bunch of other Red Lanterns who were left behind. And as they are killed, she takes their rings and puts them on her fingers. And they say, okay, what we need to do right now is use like the blood magic stuff to summon all of the Red Lanterns we can from the planet and bring them up to us. If we do that before Atrocitus, then we should be able to get control of most of them. And Guy's like, all right, let's do it. So we see Zilius is dragging himself over to the control panel before he dies. And he's like, all right, well, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this. And the ship's just like, warning, warning, crash collision course with the planet. He's like, yeah, I know, I get it. Just keep going. And he keeps on diving, bombing the planet. As he's dive bombing down, the computer says, by the way, we got the search results that you requested for the definition of testicle. Would you like to see what it means? And so he's just like, oh, thank God, I finally get that answer before I die. And then the screen pops up and he's like, Gardner, you son of a bitch. And he just crashes down into the planet and explodes Barg and the other pirate guy and destroys the entire blood ocean on the planet. So that's gone now as well. And then we see Bleez and Guy partnering up to use blood magic. They start trying to pull as many Red Lanterns as they can. Meanwhile, Atrocitus is doing the same thing with his Red Lanterns on the other side of the planet. And as they finish pulling as many as they can to their control, they realize it's only like a dozen. Like barely. Meanwhile, Atrocitus has well over 100, 150, 200 on his side. So, yeah, part 4 of Atrocities coming up soon. I liked it. I think this is a solid way to continue forward with the arc. I think this is this does a good job of, okay, we went to Guy Gardner's planet. It's war. He did something that, frankly, should be an entire Justice League level event, but ultimately was probably done so quick that it was just like Guy just like, all right, yeah, I'm doing what I can. No, it's I like it. I definitely enjoy it as an issue. I think this one is probably going to be, I'm going to say 8, but it's like a high 8. It's getting almost 8.5 territories, but I am just going to give it the 8 for that. If Zilius is dead, which I have every reason to assume he is, we're losing Lanterns fast, man. I'm concerned to say exactly how many will be at the end of this arc, but we'll get there. So yeah, overall solid issue, and I would highly suggest checking out this arc as a whole, but it kind of requires you to go all the way back to like Guy forming the Red Lantern Corps, so take it or leave it. Sinestro number 4, written by Cullen, Bunn, art by Rags Morales. So last issue, Sinestro, Yellow Lanterns, and Soranik all went down to a planet to rescue some Korrigarians, and then the weird anti-religion church thing showed up. That's wrong, anti-emotion church. So we open up with just a recap of some of the Yellow Lantern Corps members. Sinestro is the leader, Drac is the lore keeper, Lyssa Drac, Romat Rue is there. And then we get the 2 newer guys who we've gotten a little focus on. And I think this is the first time we get like any actual info on them. Reigen Kale is apparently got like rings, like Yellow Lantern ring fragments all throughout his body. And then Des Trevius is an assassin. So he's super deadly. But either way, we pick up right where we left off with the anti-emotion religion. They are called the Paling. And Sinestro's like, all right, well, whatever, we can deal with them. So he starts blasting away at them, but ultimately, like, they just completely ignore it. They just swat it away and just like, yeah, we're shielded by virtue of our emptiness. And so Sinestro goes up to Soranik, who's got the Korrigarians, being like, hey, get them somewhere safe, because like if my yellow powers ain't doing nothing, your green power ain't going to do nothing specially. So she's like, all right, well, I'm a Green Lantern, so don't tell me what to do, but I will do that. So we see him make a shield to deflect some like laser bolts or whatever from them, and they keep on trying to fire away Yellow Lantern energy, but it's just not working. It's 100% ineffective. And he's just like, all right, well, everyone's got a weakness. I just need to live long enough to figure out how. But while they're ducking and diving, Romat Rue gets attacked by them. And it's just like, oh, emotion is blasphemy. You will be brought in, purged of your emotional stuff. And then all of a sudden we get a mental scene of Romat Rue being torn apart by, I guess, all these different versions of himself. I don't, whatever's going on. But regardless, it is enough to get him to submit, and he just seemingly falls down as like catatonic, like non-responsive, possibly dead. And they're just like, okay, well, whatever just happened to Romat Rue, let's not let that happen to us. So as they try to figure out another battle plan. The church is like, purging can't be prevented, here you go. And Sinestro gets zapped by it. And we get to hear more of his like narrative as to what's going on. He's like, it's cold, it's numbing, but like there's a promise to it that if I just give into it, like everything's going to be okay. And we see inside of his mental state, he sees all the Korrigarians are like cheering on Hal Jordan for being the savior of Korrigar. And he's like, savior? No, that's not right. No, that's wrong. And so he he's like, I'm not going to submit. He goes over, he attacks Hal. All of a sudden, he's out in space, and he sees Hal Jordan getting frisky with his daughter. And Sorenek's like, you really are the greatest Green Lantern of all time. And Sinestro's just like, nope, this isn't happening. I know these are lies. This is stupid. And he's like firing off stuff at the illusions. And as he ignores that, he sees the Paling is like coming at him, attacking him, and he's unable to do anything still. But then he hears from behind him Sinestro Corps, and he sees Hal Jordan in a Yellow Lantern thing saying like, let's show them what the Corps is all about. And he's just like, leader of the Sinestro. Hal is not the leader of Sinestro. God damn it, this sucks. But like, it's only pissing me off more. It's not making me submit. So he shakes out of it, and the Paling is like, okay, this guy, he's really mastered the ability of fear, so he's not going to fall for it, so we're just going to have to kill him. So at that point, Sorenek comes back with a green machine gun and just starts unloading on them, which it does seem to affect them, and they say, oh, it's a different emotion, we need to recalibrate. To which point, Sinestro's like, okay, I think I get it now. So Sorenek's like, yeah, well, you know, I know you said to get to safety, but what can I say? I'm not going to listen to you. So they start going after Sorenek, but Sinestro's figured it out that they can only defend from the one emotion at a time. So now that they're defending from the Green Lantern energy, he's able to use the Yellow Lantern stuff to attack them. And in doing so, one of them just gets straight up killed by like a giant drill that he makes. And that is enough to instill the idea of fear into the rest of them. So they are no longer unafraid. They're no longer empty. To which point the rest of the Yellow Lanterns are able to come in and just wreck shop. And they do. They straight up murder all of them until it's just the leader is left and he's down on his knees. And Sinestro just tiny little pinpoint blast right through his forehead. And he's like, all right, good job, everybody. We did it. And Sorenek's like, he was down on his knees. He surrendered. You just killed him. And just like, he would have been able to have like recuperated if we left him alone. That's their whole thing. It's best to just rip off that Band-Aid now. If you really want to help us out, though, go get Romot Rue, because like, check out what happened to him. That's crazy. So at that point, one of them comes up, one of the other lanterns, and it's like, hey, you fought good, Green Lantern. You and me should get it on when we get back home to the home planet. And she's just like, what the no, what kind of people are my dad hiring? This is crazy. So they see the ship that the church came in, and they say Des, Trevius, and Lissa need to go up and check it out, but their power battery is like super low. Meanwhile, Lissa comes over to Sinestro's battery and just like whispers into it or something, just like holds it up, and all of a sudden the power levels just shoot back up to 100. And Des is like, how the hell did that happen? This is like, before you ask, no, there's no way that you would be able to do it. That's strictly a Sinestro thing. So he flies up into the church ship, which is pretty much a cathedral mixed together with a ship. And all these people inside are just completely blind to him. They are absolutely blind in their devotion to the church. So they are kind of lost right now that they realize that all of their leaders are gone. And they're just like standing around emotionless and just like, okay, all right. Sinestro looks through some plans and sees that like there were bigger plans involved. So he takes note of that. And then as the rest of the Yellow Lantern Corps gets up, they're just like, all right, seen all I need to do. Take out the ship. And so the ship just straight up explodes with everybody inside of it, with Sinestro saying he's setting them free. So as the group and Sorenek fly off the planet, Sorenek's like, and you said there was nobody else on the ship, right? And Sinestro's like, yep, totally, completely automated. Don't have to worry about that. By the way, where are the Korrigarians? To which point Sorenek is like, oh, don't worry, I left them with someone safe. And Sinestro's like, whoa, did you say someone? And we see that the Korrigarians are in a green bubble being held by Hal Jordan. And he's like, hey, Sinestro, let's have a little chat. And Sinestro's like, God damn it. I'm hoping this isn't the end of the like emotionless church arc. I'm hoping that we do get some more with that, because that seemed like an interesting setup. I mean, yes, it does just show the strength of Sinestro and how powerful he is, but like, I don't know, I kind of wanted that to be a longer thing rather than just like an issue and a half, really. Beyond that, it's a perfectly fine issue. It definitely sets up more of the Hal Jordan stuff, which if that's what we're going to be exploring is like the longer term thing to this arc of Sinestro becoming his own and like either ignoring Hal or trying to overcome Hal or being a rivalry between the two, like I'm okay with any of those. I think they could all be explored in an interesting way. So as it stands for this issue, I'm going to go ahead and say this one's just a flat 7. It's solid. It's not great, but it is still a decent read. And whatever we get into next issue, probably a massive fight scene between Hal and Sinestro. I'm up for it. Sounds interesting. Aquaman Annual Number 2, written by Geoff Parker, art by, well, hard to define. So this book is split into 2 different sections, like wholesale different stories, kind of related to each other. The first part is written by, or art by Yvel Guichet and Alvaro Martinez, and then the second part is Jason Gorder and Wayne Foucher. So first part here is Aquaman and Wonder Woman, and if you remember back in issues 29 and 30, we had a big old pit in the ground that came out with like giants and stuff like that. Hercules was there, and then Aquaman had to fight them all back down, but a bunch of them escaped. Pretty much all of them escaped. So he got Wonder Woman's help, and that's what this issue is. It's just following up on that. So we open up with one of the monsters telling the story of how they got out, and how there was an archaeologist who stole Aquaman's trident, and they messed with his brain to make him think that it was like portal technology to finding Aquaman, when in actuality, it just let them all out of this hellfire or whatever. And they were pissed off at Atlantis because King of Atlantis back then was the one who imprisoned them at that point. So they also had Hercules down there, and he went crazy, which is why Wonder Woman's brought into this. And we see the monster who's telling all of these stories to the other monsters, just like, and so they sent another spawn of the Atlantean king, and also a daughter of Zeus to come and get us, and check it out, we got him captured. And apparently both Aquaman and Wonder Woman are statues now. So we cut back to a few hours earlier. We're at a castle in France called Carcassonne, and we see this woman is just pleading out for one of the monsters, like, please, let me, I want to feel sunlight on my face, let me out of this cell. And the monster's wearing like a big sun hat and sunglasses to quote unquote blend in, is like, you, like, people of the modern age are so picky and whiny. All of you suck. We give you food, isn't that enough? And so apparently these people are having, like, they were just tourists, they were like photographers and stuff. They're having their life force drained out because they've got a special pendant or something that allows them to drain out the life force of anybody who comes up here. Meanwhile, one of the monsters comes back and says, hey, boss lady, this policeman guy was sniffing around, so I took him. And the lady's just like, look, you can't just take people like that nowadays, especially cops. Like, people are going to come looking for him. And she ruffles through his pockets, finds his phone, being like, look, they all can track each other on this. You got to break that stuff. And so she smashes it and she storms off. And she's like, I swear to God, I'm never going to be able to convince these monsters how the modern age works. Like, they just do. They can't adjust. It's crazy. So apparently we get a horrific looking monster, which is basically a giant raven crow looking thing, but with like giant fleshy lips. I hate it. But it basically comes up and just like, hey, so we've been telling everybody, we've sent out the word that there's a movie shoot going on here, and that's why so many tourists are coming up and are like able to be captured by us. But we've got 2 tourists here who apparently are looking for the missing tourists. And she's like, are they cops or soldiers? And she's like, no, they're just looking at normal people. And it's like, oh, sweet, awesome, send them up. And we see these normal people are Aquaman and Wonder Woman dressed in their civvies. And they're talking about just being like, okay, Aquaman's like, why would they take that seems really big of a castle for them to just take over? And Wonder Woman's like, you got to think back to the myths, man. The giants of old myth always took over like castles and fortresses. They're totally going to be here too. And besides, isn't it your job as King of Atlantis to like catch these guys and bring them back in? And Aquaman's like, I can care because they're killing people as well. It's not just because Atlantis. Like, I do care about normal things. And she's like, right, yeah, sorry. So Wonder Woman also says that she feels bad because Hercules is a half-brother to her, and the fact that he was crazy and trapped down in that hole, she's wondering if there's anything that can be done to help. And Aquaman's like, I don't know, man. He seemed pretty gone. So all of a sudden, I'm going to call him a gnome because he looks like a gnome, just comes up, just be like, oh, are you looking for some foreigners around these parts? And they're like, yes, we are. And it's like, oh, well, they're up here. Definitely. Come this way. And Aquaman's like, oh, well, hopefully this guy knows what he's talking about. And Wonder Woman's like, seriously? That's a monster. Do you not smell the sulfur on him? Like, it's a monster in disguise. So Aquaman texts somebody saying, hey, you better get up here. Bring the rock. Meanwhile, they make their way through this castle area, and it's full of bustling people. And she's like, Aquaman's like, are all these people monsters? It's like, no, most of these people are people. They're just put under some sort of spell. We should be fine as long as we just remember, as long as we stay aware of it. And so they get brought before the like leader of the monsters, and the monster's just like, Aquaman's like, do we go? Do we punch now? One of them's like, hold on, let them explain their plan. And so the leader of the monster comes out just being like, hey, tourists, there's nothing you can do now. You're trapped. We are going to kill you, but not like actually kill you. We're just going to drain the life out of you, but keep you alive. And gives a whole thing on giants. Like it's a rehearsed monologue on like why giants are so cool. And then all of a sudden the monsters come out. And she sings a song to say, like, put them in an entrancement or something like that. But Aquaman and Wonder Woman don't fall for it. They start getting into a fight. Their clothes get ripped. And, of course, they bust out the costumes. And that's where the monsters are like, ah, crap, it's Aquaman. And Wonder Woman. She's here, too, now. So they get into a fight with this big, like, lion chimera-looking thing. And it seems like Wonder Woman is trying to go pretty deadly with it. Like, she like actually really killing them. Meanwhile, Aquaman's just like, hold on, let's just like try not to murder them. We don't know if that's like going to be the best thing for our cause here. And Wonder Woman's just like, okay, but like if we don't go all the way, if we don't fight back, like they will kill us. They are much stronger than they were the last time. So Aquaman's like, it's okay, we got help on the way, we just need to hold them off. So we see like a much bigger Cyclops looking one comes and attacks, uses a club to just hit them both outside the castle, to which a bunch of tourists are just like, oh wow, hey, that movie must be going along pretty well. That looks pretty lifelike. And the leader of the giants is like, just ignore the tourists. We can feed on them later. Focus on Aquaman and Wonder Woman killing them. So at that point, she starts singing a song again, and this time because they're distracted, they start to fall under it. And Aquaman looks over at Wonder Woman, sees her getting extremely deadly, extremely murderous, whereas Wonder Woman looks over to Aquaman and sees the help that arrived is actually the Atlantean army, who's just mowing down innocent civilians on their way up. And so they go at each other's throats, saying like, Aquaman's like, Diana, you're being too rough. This is too much. You don't see, you're a god, and you don't see these as like normal creatures that should be defended. And Wonder Woman's just like, bro, you're mowing down civilians. What the hell is wrong with you? The Atlanteans can't be trusted. So they start fighting with each other. The giant lady summons a spider creature to wrap them up in web that also freezes them in time. And that's how we open up with the earlier thing of them now being trapped as statues. And she's like, all right, because they're superheroes, when we drain the life from them, it might actually be enough to keep us fed for a while because, like, you know, the constant hunger thing. So, like, let's give that a shot. So she goes ahead to do that. And then all of a sudden, entering in from below is, I'm blanking on his name, Evan something, the archaeologist from before. He's got a different stone, a blue stone. He taps it to one of their heads, and the guy just immediately falls to the ground and just, like, goes unconscious. So as he starts walking up, everyone's like, oh, it's our guy who let us free. We honor him. We respect him. And he's just like, yeah. I know that you guys aren't going to do anything to me because you like that I brought you out of your prison. But that's why I got this magic stone thing, which is going to be able to drain the life force back out of you and put you back into the humans you stole it from. And she's just like, well, then I'm just going to kill you. That's just like, listen to my song and I will take you out. But because of, I don't know, there was a time limit or something like that, Wonder Woman and Aquaman both break free of their imprisonment. They start attacking, and we get into another fight scene. Wonder Woman puts the leader of the monsters in the lasso of truth, and basically is just like, oh, yes, we've got her. Like, we can take her out now. Tell me where all of the humans you're keeping are. It's like, oh, they're in the chambers in the walls. They're okay, but not great. And so Evan goes along with all of the monsters and puts the stone to each of them, getting their life force drained back out of them and putting back into the persons. It seems like it's not 100% though. Like, the humans are saying like, wait, but hold on, I still look older and like my skin feels looser. And just like, look, hey, we managed to make you not die. That's the best we can do. We're doing our best. This is monsters. You're lucky you're not dead. So they managed to do all that. And then Evan's just like, hey man, thanks for showing up. Oh wait, his name's Daniel. It's Daniel Evans. I remember Evans somewhere in there. Regardless, Daniel. And he's just like, hey, I did a bad thing letting out the monsters. I'm going to keep trying to make up for it for the rest of my life. And then Superman calls for Wonder Woman saying something big's going on. She's like, well, gotta go. Hey, Aquaman, sorry about the whole thinking Atlanteans were still attacking thing. I know that's like an irrational fear. It's not something that's real. And Aquaman's like, sorry, I think you're not, compassionate enough towards people. I know that's also not based in anything. And so they have a smile. Wonder Woman flies off. Aquaman dives back in the water. And that's it. But then we keep going a few days later, and we see Wonder Woman has taken one of the monsters who's driving a speedboat hostage and is saying, take me back to your lair. They're somewhere in the Aegean Sea, because I skipped over it, but early in the previous story, we had the Queen of the Monsters or whatever saying, hey, a bunch of our other monsters don't like how we're just draining the life instead of killing them, and they just left for the sea. They just made a different sect of monsters. So Wonder Woman's seeking those out. As she heads out there, she ends up calling Mara, and Mara shows up in like a water spout, and she's like, hi, Wonder Woman, Aquaman was busy. I hope you're okay with me. And she's like, I'm totally cool with you. You're freaking awesome. So they take this boat to a giant hollowed out volcano that's long dead, and just like, okay, that makes sense. You guys be hanging out here. And they see the corpses just littered with abandoned boats and dead bodies. And the monster explains on the Lasso of Truth, like, they have parties out here, and when we take them, we have our own parties. And he calls out to all the other monsters saying like, hey, these people are gods. They have me under control. Attack them, kill them. And one of them was like, son of a bitch. All right. So all of them start leaping out. And then there's a giant ass crab spider monster who comes out just being like, hey, I'm the leader here. What's up? Why are you pissed off about this? And they're like, because you're killing a bunch of innocent people. It's like, you guys kill innocent animals to eat. We do not see you as any different than that. We require sustenance. And it's like, okay, but like, you still can't be killing people. And just like, why not? We didn't ask for our appetite to be this, but like, it is what it is, man. We got to eat this stuff. And one was like, did you try anything else? Any other substitutes? And he's like, no. He's like, well, then I'm not going to feel bad for you. So at that point, it's like, all right, whatever. You guys got billions of humans on this planet. We should be praised as heroes for bringing down the population. It's like, all right, we're pulling that card. Yeah, we're just going to fight now. So Mara brings up some water and forms a giant water shark to attack the crab spider. Just takes him off the board entirely. All the other monsters jump in and start fighting. They start to get surrounded. Mara's like, hey, I don't have enough water to really make this work. We got to get to the other side of the island so we can like funnel them there. And so they hop on the boat, and Mara uses the boat to like glide over the volcano. Meanwhile, she makes a giant hollow tunnel from the top of the sea down to the seafloor and says, hey, this is a dormant volcano, but it's not totally dead. Drill through the ground with your super strength and make the lava like boil. And so she makes a big hole for lava, and then Mara takes all of the monsters left, puts them into a water spout, and funnels them all back down into the lava, effectively killing them. And it works. They're all just gone. And Wonder Woman's like, that was awesome. That was amazing. That's great. And then Mara passes out, and she's like, oh, geez, Mara, that was a lot of water you moved. You cool? And she's like, yeah, just make sure nothing attacks me for a while. And Wonder Woman's like, absolutely. You warrior. You're so cool. And that's it. That's the annual. I like it. I mean, I think it's a solid way to wrap up the end of the book. It's weird that it was split up into like a separate annual. I don't like, it kind of felt to me like they were told at one point or like pitched the idea to say like, hey, could we spin this off into a mini series and like finish this up over there elsewhere? And DC was like, if it sells enough, and then it just didn't. So it's like, nope, instead you're going to have to put it in an annual. Because it feels weird that we got two separate stories in this book, and yet both of them are just completely conclusive. Like there's no, and then the story carries on. Like both of them, you could have had either one of them and been like, yep, that was it. That was all the monsters taken care of. But instead, both of them feel like that. So yeah, I don't know. It's a weird situation, but it's not a bad book. I'm going to say this is probably a, I'm going to give it a 7.5. It doesn't just quite crack that 8, and I think it's mainly because the Aquaman story in the first half doesn't feel as neat as it should. It feels a little bit contrived of like Wonder Woman and Aquaman fighting each other instead of just like, I don't know. It seems like the spell should make them like submissive or something to the monsters, or at the very least see the monsters as friendly or something, but instead it's just turning them against each other, which doesn't seem like it should be any more easy to take them down. But yeah, no, it's a 7.5 still, a solid issue regardless. Justice League number 32, written by Geoff Johns, art by Doug Mahnke. So last issue, we had Jessica Cruz getting the power ring from the crime syndicate, and it basically being forced to go out and just cause mass chaos and destruction and all this horrible stuff. And then the very end of the issue introduced the Doom Patrol. So this issue picks up in a super secure holding facility somewhere where they are keeping Superwoman from the crime syndicate, and she's singing nursery rhymes to her unborn baby, and, you know, she's 3 months pregnant, and it's like, oh yeah, we don't know who the father is, but boy howdy, it's going to be messed up. And then we cut over to 1 week ago, where we show Niles Calder, aka the chief of the Doom Patrol, is talking to Element Woman inside of a big, like, gaseous containment unit or whatever, and he's just like, Element Woman, the Justice League doesn't care about you. They called off their search for you after, like, Trinity War. Like, it's done. They definitely don't care. And she's like, but I fought Despero. It's like, it doesn't matter. You're disposable to them. You're a freak. The Justice League doesn't want you. But I do. I got my own team, especially made of people like freaks. And I want you to meet them, okay? Like, let's do the roll call here. First out, Cliff Steele, a.k.a. Robot Man. And she recognizes the name, like, Cliff Steele, you're a NASCAR driver. He's like, I was, but then I died, and now I'm a robot. So then we bring out Larry Trainer, the negative man, to which point he says, yep, he's got all these bandages over his face because he gives off this intense radiation that'll definitely kill you. Do not be around him if he takes off his bandages. And she's like, okay. And then it's like, and last release, we've got Rita Starr, which she's the one who calls out. Element Woman's like, oh my God, you're a famous movie actress. I've seen all your stuff. I'm a total nerd for you. And Rita's just standing there with like a smile plastered on her face, like, I'm so happy. I'm so happy. And Element Woman's like, you got a beautiful smile, but you don't have to keep that if it's uncomfortable. And we see her like pouting off to the side, like, I don't think she likes me. And Robot Man and Negative Man are like, no, she likes you. Everybody likes you. You're great. She said she watched all your movies. To which Niles explains, like, yeah, she was exposed to some sort of gas, and now if her mood goes apart, so does her cellular structure. So that's a thing. And either way, Niles is just like, okay, again, these people, they're freaks. They are messed up. But so are you. So wouldn't you like to be a part of the team? Cut to present day. We see all of them ready to go in and fight against Power Ring. And Niles calls it out, being like, oh, you attack this team. We give you a chance to surrender. Take off your ring now or else. And the ring responds back, like, oh, please try to stop us. I would love to see that. So Robot Man and Negative Man, in fact, the whole crew, is just fighting against all these constructs and trying to figure out, like, how best to do this, what to go in for. Power Ring fires a shot against Rita, to which Element Woman forms a brick wall to stop the attack. And she hears Jessica Cruz calling out, saying, like, please, whoever you are, just leave. Get out of here. I don't want to hurt anyone. The ring just won't come off. And then the ring's just like, oh, but I know your secret, Jessica, how you're actually super violent. I know everything about you. And Element Woman's like, oh, she's not in control of this. Got it. But Niles is like, okay, well, if she goes down, the ring goes down. So he fires a gun at her, to which Element Woman jumps in the way, just being like, first off, she's giving off intense heat. Your bullets just would have melted. Second off, she's not in control. You can't like go after her. She's just scared. So at this point, there's a building on fire because of all the attacks. Robot Man, Rita, and all them are looking at the building, just being like, "There's innocent people in there. We got to go in there and stop." But then the chief is just like, "Screw that. We're here for the ring, man. Go after her. She's flying off. She's getting away. We need that ring." And all the Doom Patrol is just like, "But there's people, well, we can hear them screaming. There's kids in there." And he's like, "It's either a couple of them die and we get the ring, or a bunch more die because we let her go. It's your mission. You got to do what I say." And Negative Man's like, "I mean, the chief is always right. I guess we got to do that." But then right then, a boom tube opens up, and the chief is just like, "God damn it." And saving everybody from the building is the whole Justice League to get like everybody out, no problem. Doom Patrol watches on, just like, "Oh my God, they're the coolest. They did it. They got everybody out. That's awesome." And Element Woman's like, "Check it out, Justice League. Isn't that cool, Niles?" And he's just like, "No, they suck. Screw them. Go get the ring. Everybody go get the ring now." So we cut over to Power Ring, who's basically saying like, "Oh good, the Justice League is here. I'm going to make a big fire. They're going to help me burn this whole place to the ground." So Chief is just really laying into the Doom Patrol, just being like, "Hey, their job is saving people. Your job is getting the damn ring. In fact, your job is obeying me, because I gave you your lives back, and now you owe them to me. I will take them away from you." And then we cut over to LexCorp. So we see Captain Cold, aka Leonard Snart, is being walked through LexCorp. If you remember, he now works there, and he requests a meeting with Lex Luthor. He finally gets in. He's like, Lex is like, "Hey man, take a seat." And he's like, "You don't have any chairs." And he's like, "All right, anyway, you know why I want you to come to LexCorp?" He's like, "Right, because you said that I helped save the world, and you wanted to like help me do stuff and whatnot. So what's up?" And Lex is like, "Here's the thing. You are underestimated. You are Captain Cold. You managed to take out the like super deadly speedster of the crime syndicate. That's great. And I want you to be part of much greater things." And they do a little flash aside to show that they did take a blood sample from him. So clearly that's going to be something. But Leonard's just like, "Oh man, I mean, I don't, if we're talking about illegal stuff, I don't want to do it. I've got a clean slate. I want to do that." And he's like, No. I want you to be the head of security for LexCorp. You've the ability to lead people. You've saved the world. You can do this. I believe in you, and I want to see what you can do. Also, I'll give you a truckload of money." And he's like, "Money, you say? I'm in." So Lex gets alerted that the Justice League boom tube somewhere. So he's been alerted to that. Meanwhile, back out in wherever the hell they're at, Jessica Cruz is blasting the Doom Patrol, basically causing mass chaos and destruction. Justice League is watching on, being like, "Who the hell are these guys? Why they're not like caring about getting any innocence, but they're going after the power. Are they good guys? What do we do?" And Cyborg's like, "I don't know. Hey, Shazam, can you run a little bit of cover for me?" And he's like, "Do I really got to fight a girl? Is that what you're asking me to do?" And he's just like, "Dude, just do it." So Shazam makes a lightning bolt over Power Ring, which gives Cyborg enough time to leap in, grab hold of Power Ring, and start doing an interface with it. And Power Ring's just like, "Oh, you want to see what's going on up in here? All right, Cyborg, I'll show you what's coming your way." So gives a breakdown of Power Ring contains the spirit of Volthoom, the first Lantern. It's possibly from, the Crime Syndicate universe or a different one entirely. His planet was destroyed, and now he is drawn here to the weak and fearful Jessica Cruz, and apparently she was out on a hunting trip with some friends. They saw two guys in suits burying some bodies, and not wanting to be seen, all of her friends were killed. Jessica ran away, and seemingly she was the only one who survived because of it. And now Power Ring's whole thing that he wants to do is set fire to the multiverse so that the being who destroyed his world will come here to theirs. And it's specifically because that being, who we've already gotten revealed is Anti-Monitor at the end of the previous arc, requires Superman or Superwoman's child. So at that point, he kicks Cyborg out of his system. Power Ring falls unconscious, and the Doom Patrol steps up, just being like, "All right, this is my only chance. We're going to get this lady. We're going to get her all boxed up. She's going to come in, and we're not going to let the Justice League take them. And you got to remember, nobody likes you freaks. you're all disgusting and you all suck, and she's a freak like you. So you guys keep the Justice League away while I get Power Ring. And as he goes to pick up Power Ring and the Doom Patrol goes off to fight the Justice League, Lex Luthor comes up behind Niles Caller and holds like an electrified fist behind his back, just being like, hey Niles, tell your freaks not to attack the Justice League and give us Power Ring, or else I'm going to bust a hole in your spine. So, yeah, that's that. I don't remember the Chief being such a dick. We saw him over in Ravagers before this, before he had the Doom Patrol built up, but like, he wasn't this much of a dick. Either way, though, it's a solid issue. I like the characterizations of the Doom Patrol. For what little they're in there, they do seem like they want to do the right thing, but the Chief is just a dick. So, yeah, I'm intrigued. And obviously the lore dump on Power Ring really gives a lot of saying how he wants to light a fire that's big enough for the Anti-Monitor to see. There's a lot going into that, and we're definitely setting up for what will eventually become the final arc of this series, but I'm enjoying it. So overall, I'm going to say this is probably a 7.5 or an 8. I'm trying to decide. I'm going to say 8. I'm going to give it the 8. I definitely enjoyed it, and I think this issue probably isn't like one of the necessary issues. You can probably just pick this like generic sort of backstory of Volthoom and powering up, but it's a solid first outing for it, so I'm interested. Batman Eternal number 17, written by Snyder, Tynion, Fox, Layman, and Seeley, art by Dustin Nguyen. So, do you want to know Deacon Blackfire's backstory? If so, this is the issue for you. Do you want literally anything else? Well, tough. So, we open up 3 years ago at a small little church. We get an audience clapping for the arrival of Deacon Blackfire. And, he's a reverend. He steps up. He goes, brothers and sisters, I'm here to help you. I'm here to do whatever I have to do. Let us pray. And we cut back to modern day where he is commanding his zombie army in the caves beneath Arkham Asylum. And he's saying like, oh, help me bring down the light. And Bowing and Corrigan are like, okay, well, we got some problems. I don't think this guy was supposed to be able to come back. And then from the shadows of one of the caves comes Joker's daughter, who's carrying Luke Fox's head, which is bleeding from the eyes. And then all of a sudden, Luke's roommate wakes up. It was all a dream. It was all a nightmare. And he's like, geez. Hops on the phone. Hey, Luke, man, I just had the craziest nightmare. It's okay, look, whatever. Like, no one's seen you for a week, man. Your mom called me. What's going on? Hit me up. Bye. So at that point, we cut back down into the actual things going on in Arkham's Caves, and it's basically exactly that. So Bowing's like, hey, look, I don't know where we are. These caves keep on changing. My compass is fried. I don't know what's going on. And Corrigan's like, hey, it's all right. We'll keep it together. And Bowing's like, dude, you keep on saying to like keep cool. I'm done keeping it cool. And so it looks like Batwing unleashes some sort of stun wave on all of the zombie creatures, like ghouls that are surrounding them. And Batwing's like, you think I'm supposed to just like accept that supernatural things exist? Okay, I accept it. I understand it. It's super cool. Now I'm going to kick its ass. And he just starts beating up the zombies. So we cut back over to Tokyo, where Red Robin and Harper, because she doesn't have a name yet, are visiting Sergei Alexandrov, who was someone who Batman was trained by, I think, back in the day. And he's got a little robot monkey, or cyborg monkey, I guess I should say. And Red Robin's like, hey, nanotechnology, we're seeing it in Gotham. We think it's yours. You got to help us out, man. We think it's your fault. And he's like, oh, I trained better men than you, dude. You better show some respect. And the monkey jumps off his shoulder, hops over to Harper, and he's like, oh, be careful. The monkey's dangerous. And the monkey pulls like a syringe out of nowhere and is about to stab Harper with it. But Harper uses her phone to hijack or electrify the cybernetic parts of the monkey and just screeches and scurries away. And Sergei's like, ooh, that was awful. Don't do that to my monkey. But also, you're super cool. Wait, what's her name? And Red Robin's like, don't worry about it. Here, check this out. And so there's schematics for the nanobots. And he's just like, yeah, those are mine, but like they're old. I wouldn't be the one who sent them out. And Red Robin's like, well, I don't believe you. So you're going to come with us to Gotham and we're going to deal with this. And he's like, I don't think that's exactly what's happening. But seriously, what's her name? So cut back to 3 years ago. And Deacon's like, brothers and sisters of Gotham. Gotham used to be a wonderful place, but now it is bathed in sin. It is bathed in hellfire, and they are praising false idols out there. And this area that you are in used to be called Park Row, but now it is called Crime Alley. And I believe that we are worth saving. That this city is worth saving. We will be saved by you and I. Can I get an amen? Amen. So he goes off. He gives all of them a warm meal. But then he meets up with one of his followers outside of a locked door and just says, oh, well, we've taken the people that you selected from the crowd and they are being chained and prepared for your administrations. And Deacon says, good, now what about our special guest? He says, oh, well, the special guest has been deprived of sleep for 7 days and nights and has been given only drugged food and water. And Deacon says, good, I will go visit him now. And we see that it is Batman, whose symbol is torn off his chest. He's bloodied and he's chained up to a pipe. So, cut back to now, we go to Wayne Manor, and we just get 2 pages of Julia being like, Alfred, how could you be a butler? And Alfred goes, there's a lot you don't understand. She goes, I understand perfectly. You aren't cool. And that's basically how it goes. Back over at the Arkham story, Batwing and them are just continuing to try to beat up all the ghouls, and Deacon, still possessing that other body, is like, you stupid little idiots. Every time you beat them up, every drop of blood spilled only takes you deeper into my realm. And they get slowly pushed over the edge of this cliff down into some dark waters below. Cutting back 3 years ago again, Batman is told to drink by Deacon, and Batman's just like, what, so you can keep drugging me? Nah, man, I ain't falling for it. I still don't think you're the Messiah. You suck. I hate you. And Deacon's like, see, brothers and sisters, see, random people here. Batman is the false idol. Batman is evil. Screw Batman. He thinks he can, he wants you to suffer so that he can save you. This is our city. Let's take him out. And Batman's like, why don't you take me out, Deacon? Come on, I'm just a dude tied up to a pipe. I can't do anything. I'm unarmed. Go ahead. You get all these guys to do all your dirty work. Why don't you go ahead and do something? Maybe it's because you drug them. Maybe it's because you tortured them. Does he do that to you guys? Do you think you've been drugged? And they all start looking at each other, and Deacon's just like, shut up. No, I don't do. And as he's like approaching Batman, Batman just kicks him in the chest, which gives him enough leverage to pull down off of the pipe. And he's like, you can't even admit what you did to them. And Deacon falls back into his crowd and is just like, go on, Deacon, show him your righteous power. Come on, you can do it. And Deacon's like, I don't want to do that. And Batman's just coming up. He's just like, come on, Deacon, you can feel it. You're not in control anymore. You say that you don't have a problem beating me up. Why are you so afraid? And Deacon's just like down on his back. He's just like, someone attack this guy, kill him, shoot him, anything. And basically the crowd turns on Deacon and they call him out as a fraud and they just beat him up, possibly to the point of death. But we see Deacon nowadays under Gotham possessing a body. He's like, well, you thought you could kill me, Gotham, but I'm back. I've got power, and I'm gonna take all these people and I'm gonna send them up to the top side. And Corrigan's down in the water with Batwing, like, God, could you give me the Spectre now? Like, this is really important that I get the Spectre right now. And he looks around for Batwing, trying to figure out where he is. Meanwhile, Deacon's just like, all right, everybody, you're growing wings and you're crawling out of the walls and whatnot. Fly up. We're taking back Gotham. We're going up to the top side. Corrigan's like, seriously, God, like anytime you're feeling for it. And we see all of the beasts and creatures climbing up to the top side. Joker's daughter's there as well, just going like, oh, hell yes, this is awesome. And as they are going up, we see Corrigan is dragged under the water by a demon saying like, oh, can I get an amen, Detective Corrigan? So that seems like it's a big deal. That seems like there's big things stewing. I appreciate the backstory on Deacon. I know that he came from a Batman story in like early 90s, I think, called The Cult. I never read it. I don't know his actual backstory, but if this is the sort of backstory we're going with where he is just a really, really messed up proselytizer. I'm good with that. That's all I need in terms of like backstory to get this. Whether or not he actually has any powers, it seems like he does, so I'm a bit more interested in that aspect of him, but if we get that later, so be it. All in all, this one's probably just going to be it's like a flat 7. It's a pretty just straight in the middle there. It's not a bad issue by any means, but I do think, again, like, this story of Corian and Batwing down in Arkham has a lot of potential. It has a lot of like creepiness factor to it, but it feels like they're stretching out these issues because there just isn't enough going on. It feels like this is going to have to be a story that lasts until a certain point, probably like mid 30s to 40s of this series before it finally gets wrapped up to a point, and it just doesn't have enough to keep that going. So hopefully I'll be proven wrong. Hopefully there is more like specific content to this one and we can develop it a bit more, but for the past like 4 issues that we've been focusing on this specific plot, I feel like it's only got 2 issues worth of content in there. So yeah, beyond that, it's just a 7. It's solid, but not great by any means. Future's End number 13, written by Azzarello, Lemire, Jurgens, and Giffen, art by Patrick Zurcher. This issue picks up at the Wounded Duck Bar where there is a dude with a gun, and he is holding up the place, and he's telling Cal, aka Tim Drake, and his girlfriend Maddie that he wants all their money, all their cash in the register and all that. He aims the gun over at Tim Drake after he's like, hey, no one needs to get hurt here, fires the gun, barely misses his head. Maddie freaks out for a second. He takes all the cash out of the register, passes over the counter, and then the dude walks over to Maddie and rips the necklace off of her neck, and it's just like, there, now I got everything I want. So he runs out. Tim comforts Maddie, and she's just like, I thought you were going to like go and beat him up or anything. And he's like, he had a gun. Why would I go to beat him up? And she's like, I still kind of think you're Tim Drake, but I'm sorry. Look, he took my jewelry. That's all the jewelry I had at all. And he's like, I'll get you more jewelry. It's okay. So we cut over to Mr. Terrific, who is in bedroom with his wife, girlfriend, I don't know, Marlene. And she's just like, you went on TV and said that that new Batman is an alien, which after all of the war stuff we had with Earth 2, like, that just, you're stirring up that kind of hatred or whatnot, and that's not what you're about, and like, you shouldn't be doing that. And he's like, I didn't want to do that. Like, that is, it's like difficult for me to deal with that, but it's my only path I had available. So he goes down to his lab, the computer's talking to him, just being like, hey man, something wrong? And he's like, I don't know. Look, and he looks over at the body of the mechanized cyborg plastique, just being like, this thing shouldn't exist. Like, it's all made of Earth tech, none of it's alien, but like, it's so advanced that like, I don't know what to even think of it right now. And the computer's just like, okay, so if the other Batman is related to it, you saw him with this, then you need to find the new Batman. It's fine that you called him an alien. Just like, is it? Like, I don't know. Like, it's against my morality to like do that sort of thing, to stir up this hatred just to get out of that. And the computer's just like, well, it seems like it's for the safety of everybody on Earth. So yeah, I think your morality needs to take a back seat for that. It's the burden of greatness. So we go over to Cadmus Island where Grifter and 50 Sue are on top of one of the buildings, and Grifter's trying to break into an air vent on 50 Sue's orders, and she's just like, look, you got attacked by a stealth OMAC, but there is no such thing as a stealth OMAC, so that's kind of crazy, and let's just figure out what we can do about that. And Grifter's like, okay, all right, so bringing into this vent, looks down the like pipe of it, and he's like, okay, well, it's like a few stories tall. How are we supposed to get down? And 50 Sue just pushes him down and then like uses her powers to stop his fall at the last second. And she's like, haha, I got you. So they start walking through the vent, and he's like, hey, this is, are we breaking into that room with all of like the Earth 2 people that you showed me before? And she's like, no, we're like several stories deeper than that. We're in like the sub basement. And he's like, shouldn't there be more security around these parts? I feel like we're not able to break in this easily, right? And she's like, yeah, no, there's all these like sensors and whatever that are keeping track of noises and such, but I can disable them. I'm all powerful. I'm easily able to do that. So he asks what they're even doing down there at all. And she says, look, there are no such things as stealth-o-max. So we're just going to go down and we're going to get some of the tech people down here working and thinking and trying to figure out like what this could be. And he's just like, okay, but then why? We could easily like just go talk to the cabinet scientist. It's not a problem. She's like, oh, we're not talking to the cabinet scientist. And as they get to a little hole in the vent, we see that the scientists down here are normal human people, but they're Earth 2 people. No superpowers, nothing like that. They're just Earth 2 scientists, and they are kept here very secretly. So we cut back to New York, where we see the guy who robbed the bar earlier is talking to a guy in an alley saying like, yeah, I got all the cash if you got what I need. And he's about to do a trade. And then all of a sudden, Tim Drake comes in, starts kicking faces, starts breaking hands with a bow staff. And he's like, oh, yeah, you shouldn't have robbed from us. Here, let me hit your good hand. Now let me hit your other hand. And he just takes them both out. And as the guy who robbed, he's just like, who are you? And he's like, oh, I'm just a guy out shopping, as he picks up the jewelry that was stolen from Maddie and takes it back. So we cut to Coil, Key, and Plastique as they're watching the Mr. Terrific like news thing on repeat, and just like, look at this. That's our guy who wants to work with us to break into Terrifitech. He's now all over the news, and they're saying he's an alien. They're saying that he's one of the other people. So like, screw that. We can't work with him anymore. And Key is just like, or maybe it's Coil, I can't remember. He's just like freaking out. He's just like, Jesus, am I the only one who's like super serious about this? This is a bad thing. And then Terry walks in and he's just like, what's a bad thing? What's going on? And he's just like, look, you probably brought along like cops and stuff with you. They were following you. He's like, no, they weren't following me. Stop being so paranoid. And he looks around the rest of the group just being like, seriously, like everything's fine. Don't worry about it. And Key speaks up just saying like, hey, but like, no, seriously, like, you are all over the news. Even if we believed you that you were like good, you're too hot. We can't possibly do a stealth mission with you right now. And Terry's just like, well, fine, I'll just do it myself. He's like, hell no, you won't do it yourself. This is our job. And Terry's like, you want to bet? You want to go? And Plastique folds a little paper airplane and loads it up with energy, throws it at Terry, and as it collides with him, it just explodes and knocks him unconscious on the ground. So that's all heard from Terry. And then we go to Canada to follow up on the Emiko and Barda plot from like 3 issues ago. And Barda's like, oh, I shouldn't be out here. Someone's going to see me. And it's like, well, yeah, you're kind of hard to miss. But yeah, so here's the thing. She basically calls out saying, hey, Barda, like, I want to tell you about the other heroes from your Earth. And she's like, I don't know what you're talking about. We came here to this Earth during the war. We were refugees, but because of the war, everyone viewed us like we were invaders instead. I basically had to give up the fact that I was Big Barda and just pretend to be a normal person just so they wouldn't kill me. And I that's all that happened. She's like, right, but the heroes from your Earth. And he's like, what heroes? They arrived on a ship and I literally saw it got atomized by the Apocalypse Fleet. It is gone. And she's like, you so sure about that? I know that other heroes from your Earth survived, but in order to prove it, we have to go to Metropolis and get to Lois Lane. And Barda's like, we can't get to Metropolis without passports and stuff like that we won't possibly be able to get. And she's like, don't worry about it. I know a guy. And then all of a sudden, a little girl comes up who looks a hell of a lot like 50 Sue. And she says, can you two help me find my daddy? And Emiko's like, oh, you poor thing. Of course, we'll help you find your daddy. And Barda's like, I don't like this. This girl is way too innocent for this part of Canada. I don't like that. And she's like, oh, shut up. It'll just take a minute. So the girl leads them down an alleyway. And of course, it's just 50 Sue. And she's like, God, you two are morons. How did you manage to survive this long? And then Deathstroke comes out and says, Big Barda, you can come peacefully or be terminated. And 50 Sue is smiling and saying, gotcha. She's just the worst. Okay. I like the Terry stuff. I like the Tim Drake stuff so far. I think if we have to deal with another like 4 issues of, oh, but I thought for sure you were Red Robin, I'm going to lose my mind. But for now, it's still okay. Especially now we see him actually busting out the moves. I think that helps it along a little bit as well. whatever was going on with the Bard and Emiko, it seems like it's folded into the Deathstroke Cadmus stuff. I'm sure we'll get there. I'm not sure. Grifter's plot is the most enigmatic to me. It's just, I don't really know what they're doing with him yet, and it doesn't feel like he's completely fleshed out either. So I'm sure he's part of the mystery of what all's going on, and that's part of it. It seems really slow burning to me. And the fact that we are more than a quarter of the way done this story, and I'm just still kind of like, who's doing what now? I'm just a little bit confused on that. Other than that, I mean, Mr. Terrific's okay, the rest is okay. It's nothing in this is stand out great yet, but everything is moving along. I feel like they do have a plan here. It's just taking a really long time. So I'm going to give this one a 6.5 and just hope that it gets better. Madam 44 in The Other Side. This is written by Justin Gray and Jimmy Palmiotti, art by Jose Luis Garcia Lopez, and is the backup story to All-Star Western numbers 30 and 31. So we open up with, who the hell is Madam 44? And apparently her original name is Jan Walker, and she is currently walking through a hellscape that is still somehow an Old West town. She's firing on a bunch of demons as she walks through, and she's like, now you're probably wondering how I got here and what's all this about. Well, see, I'm looking for a person demon something named Kerberos, and he's the only one who can help me get out of this hellhole and get back home. And we see the demons are like, drop your weapons, throw them down, and she's like, oh, throw down yours and I'll let you all live. And they're like, oh, you can't kill all of us. She's like, want to bet? And she's like, I need to explain a bit more. Let's go back. And we cut to Tonopah, Nevada. And we see that her father, and her father's old partner's son are all at a general store getting their ore deposits like inspected, seeing how valuable they are. And the general store guy is like, this is like pure silver and gold. Whatever mine you found this from, you are absolutely rich now. And they're just like, oh, yeehaw, we did it. We got it. That's awesome. So Jeanne and her father need to go back to the house and like do some stuff, get ready for all that. But the son, Henry, who is the partner's son, the partner is dead, so the son is now just with the family and has kind of been absorbed in. He wants to be out on the town, and he's come from a hard time, and he's like, look, Henry, you can't tell anybody about the mine. It's super important that this stays absolutely secret. Do you understand that? And he's like, yeah, of course, I'm not stupid. And he's like, I'm not saying you're stupid. I'm just saying you can't tell anybody about the mine. So Jeanne and her father go back home, and father's just like, yeah, I'm worried that Henry's going to let something slip. And Jeanne's like, hey, he's a different person. He's really grown up. He raised me and taught me how to shoot and made me as good of a shot as I am today because I'm the best there is. And he's just like, yeah, that boy had a hard time growing up ever since his dad died and we had to take him in. But I just hope he can resist his old ways. Cut to him in the saloon drinking with a girl on his arms, just being like, in a couple of weeks, I'm going to be rich enough to buy out this whole saloon. Nay, this whole town. And she's like, oh, do tell. And he's like, how about I tell you up in the bedroom? So they get a room. It looks like they already had some fun. And he's already explained like the entirety of it as he's drinking. And the woman is obviously very conniving. She's like, so you say you got to split the money 3 ways. How do you know they're not going to cut you out of the deal? And you said it was a father and a daughter, right? They seem like they would be a lot closer together than they are with you. And he's like, nah, the girl's not like that. But the dad, I mean, I don't know. But my own father was killed by natives outside of town. It was their whole like group that was killed, and he was the only one that was left. And she's like, that sure does sound suspicious. And you're saying that he was the one who, was desirable. Like, he's the one who made all that happen. And he's just like, well, yeah, but like, he said that the will came back and I was entitled to a percentage of the claim. And it's just like, that also sounds convenient that it's only a percentage. But what do I know? I'm just a lowly prostitute who doesn't know anything about nothing. And you see, obviously, he's getting into her head. So cut to the next day, and Henry shows up to the mine, and Gian is already like looking over cave maps or whatever, and he's like, "Hey, where's your dad?" He's like, "Oh, we went to town to do like some legal stuff, no big deal." Or no, he's mapping out the tunnel, but he had to go do some legal stuff into town earlier. And it's just like, "Oh, legal stuff. Like what? Is it the will? Is he writing me out? Are you two angling for something?" And Gian pulls out her gun, just like, "Don't move." And it turns out there's a rattlesnake behind Henry, and she shoots its head off. And she's like, "Henry, you know you're like a brother to me. Like, we're never going to do anything to you. Like, you got to trust that. Like, clear your head. Don't think so much." And so she goes into the mine with her dad. Meanwhile, the prostitute rides up on a horse just saying like, "I couldn't help but overhear. Sounds to me like they be angling for something. You know what you gotta do. What would your father do?" And he says, "All right, shut your trap and give me some dynamite." So down in the mine, Jan's talking to her dad, and she's like, "Hey, Dad, Henry showed up. He said some weird stuff. I think he's just a bit paranoid based off of whatever he did last night." And he's like, "Oh, well, I love him like a son, and I could never imagine him doing anything harmful to us whatsoever." Light the fuse, throw the dynamite. It causes a cave-in, and immediately Jan's father is dead. So we have Henry realize what he did. He's like, "Oh my God, I didn't expect the whole thing to like cave in like that. It's horrible. Like I killed them. They were the only family I had left, and it's all because I listened to you, you heartless witch." And she's like, yeah, well, they were going to rip you off anyway. And now you and I can go into this and get all the stuff we need together." And he pulls out his gun, aims it at her, and she's like, "You don't have the guts." And then he kills her. And he kneels before the cave and just like, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry, William and Jean." So, deep in the cave, Jan is struggling to find a way out. She knows she barely has any oxygen left. Her father's already well past dead. And she sees this strange glowing green light. And she's like, well, guess I'm going to have to follow that if I have any hope. And it leads to this strange opening, this strange room that has like a watery substance in it. And she's like, I don't have any other options if I want to live. So she dives into it and starts swimming. And eventually she swims up to the surface of it, and it turns out it's like a portal or something to this alternate hellscape world that has like 4 moons around it and a whole bunch of skeletons with like horns and stuff on them. And she's like, "Well, I guess I'm not in Nevada anymore." And as she steps out of the pool, she sees a woman skeleton who has a black hat on and a 6-shooter around her belt. And she's like, well, this woman was shot in the head, and like they didn't take her stuff, so it must have been a murder, not a robbery. That's crazy. So she takes this woman's hat and gun belt because she thinks she might need it, and all of a sudden she hears a roar over the horizon. And as she goes to look at it, she's expecting buffalo, but instead she sees demons riding on, the best I could describe them as like rhinoceros horses. Like they're rhinoceros, but they have like the legs of horses, and they're chasing down a whole bunch of normal wild horses. And she's like, "All right, well, I'm not in Nevada anymore." So she sees one of the men falling off of a horse, and she's like, "Oh, well, the other guys didn't see that happen. I got to go care for him." So he's very gravely injured as Jan steps up, and immediately the demon's just like, "You're dead. We killed you. What in the hell is going on here? Kerberos ordered us to kill you. We were just following orders." And she's like, "I don't know what in the hell you're talking about, but that wasn't me. I just got here." And he's like, "No, it's definitely the hat's the same and the guns. Oh gosh, it's you. You look exactly the same. How can you be alive? Kerberos will do anything to keep you dead again. He's the keeper of the maps." And she's just like, "Okay, I don't let me get you some water." And then the demon just dies. She's like, "All right, that was weird." But anyway, one of the wild horses comes up after she's done digging a grave for this demon, and she puts a little cross on it, just like, "There, better see if we can get back home." And as she drives away, the cross just lights on fire. So some other demons are watching this and just being like, "Holy shit, that was her. She's back alive again. We gotta go tell the boss." So they ride into town, which, if you remember, Tonopah was the town in the real world. In this Upside Down, it's called Happenot. You can figure that one out. And we see the demons are talking with this guy, Kerberos, who is like this rich, snooty type. And they're just like, "It's her. She was alive. I swear to God." And it's just like, "No, that's impossible. Look, if she's riding into town, all you just like hide around. And then when she shows up, get her and grab her. I want to see her in person. Don't kill her." So we see Jan ride into town. And as she comes over the hill with her horse, they load up a huge like blunderbuss gun with a strange demonic looking bee, and they put it in and fire it off up the hill. It goes through the neck of her horse and then just starts like entrapping it. And she's just like, oh God, that's horrific. So she ends up shooting her horse just to put it down and out of its misery because it wasn't killed in the process. And she realizes that it was fired at her from downtown. She's like, all right, well, guess I got to go down. As she enters into town, she sees all the demons hiding in the shadow. She's like, they're going to try to get the drop on me. Hey, I don't know why you guys think I'm this big threat, but like, I just want to meet a guy named Kerberos. Can someone tell me where Kerberos is? And Kerberos yells out from like top of the balcony, like, all right, screw what I said before, kill her now. So they all jump in, they start attacking her. She just, best shot in the West, starts firing at all of them, manages to take out every single one of the goons. And as she steps back up to the saloon, there's two prostitutes, one human, one demonic, and they're just like, hey, Kerberos just ran away. He was so scared seeing you, he just fled, and you just killed all of his goons, many of which have a bounty on them. Our town is entirely in your favor. And she's like, I don't know anything about what you are talking about, and frankly, I just want to know where I am and how to get back home. And they're like, all right, where's home? And she's like, Nevada? United States? Earth? Any of that ringing a bell? And they're like, nah, never heard of any of them. Anyway, step on in and we can help you get set up to collect your bounty and see what else we can figure out. She's like, all right, sure, whatever. So they share some drinks. She shares what happened to her story. They tell him all about Kerberos and how he had somebody killed who looked just like her because her family was the original keepers of some maps that showed where there were portals that went to another world. And now she's like, well, I guess I'll just relax until I can figure out how to go find Kerberos because that's my only way to get back home. The end, question mark? The end, period. Yeah, it's a fine enough setup for a story, but it is weird. I mean, it seems to me like it's going to get into like, as much as I made the joke of Upside Down, it's going to get into that sort of vibe where there's going to be like a dark parallel to all these things. And obviously her dark parallel was the one who was killed. And then Kerberos as well looks very, very similar to Henry in a lot of ways. So I think that that's probably a relation as well. But all of these things we will never get answers for unless they somehow magically show up in some other comic as a backup. So as for these two, I'm going to go ahead and say that this is a, collectively, I'll give it a 7, but I'm going to say a full half point of that is just for the art. Garcia Lopez does fantastic art, always gives a nice little Silver Age feel to this stuff, and it looks very good. So overall, it's an okay story, but it's pretty obvious it's not going anywhere. And that's it. That is all the comics that DC Comics put out this July 30th, 2014, as well as that backup story from All-Star Western, which was put out at some other random date. So next week, we got 15 comics coming out. And normally I would just do like a vague, oh, DC, why couldn't you even it out more? Why couldn't you make it so that like a normal amount of books was coming out this week and next week, so that way I wouldn't be completely overwhelmed next week. But it's even worse than that, okay? It's so much worse than that, because next week has 2 annuals. You know, annuals, the thing that's supposed to happen on a 5th week? Yeah, no, DC said, well, I mean, what are we supposed to do? And here's the thing, dear listener, dear person tuning into this. Looking at the list here, the 2 annuals are Action Comics Annual number 3 and Superman Wonder Woman Annual number 1. Those are all part of the Superman Doomed event. So I thought, in my naivete, oh, okay, those have to take place after the normal Action Comics issue that's coming out that week. Like, they couldn't move it ahead, otherwise the story would be released out of order, which, mind you, DC has already done before, I think accidentally, but like, they still did it. But regardless, let's assume that they learned from that mistake. But here's the thing. No. The annuals come before the Action Comics issue. It's supposed to go Superman Wonder Woman Annual, Action Comics Annual, and then the Action Comics issue. So why they were all put on the same week, search me, just to make my life harder. Anyway, why don't we talk about the books that are coming out next week? I'm so excited about them. Next week we have, in no particular order, Batwing, Detective Comics, Grayson, Action Comics Annual, Green Lantern, Aquaman and the Others, Earth 2, Green Arrow, Justice League 3000, Phantom Stranger, Swamp Thing, our 2 weeklies of Batman Eternal and Future's End, and then also Superman Woman Annual, which I kind of just forgot was this week, and then I penciled it in earlier when I realized that it was. Beyond the absolute hellscape that is the Action Comics, Superman Wonder Woman movie that I will be doing at that point, we have the final issues of Batwing and Phantom Stranger, not counting the Future's End issues, because I do not consider those to be part of the story, so be sure to tune into those if you're interested. And Grayson's always fun, so be sure to check out that. Anyway, this has been a wild, weird, and wacky week. San Diego Comic-Con at this point is still going on, I believe, but a whole bunch of announcements has been made as of the recording of this. I think actually it might be done. I don't know. Regardless, crazy stuff's going on at DC. The fact that it is 10 years later as I'm doing all this stuff is absolutely wild to see all the stuff that they are changing up and doing that I would never have expected if I just was watching this show. So yeah, wild times no matter where you are at DC. So be sure to do all the stuff. I guess I should say it officially. If you have any comments that you would like to leave on this week's comics, next week's comics, any comics at all, go ahead and hit me up in the comments down below. Or we have one of multiple places that you can hit up. We have a Discord, we have a subreddit, we have a Patreon. All the links to those are in description, so be sure to check that out. Be sure to give this episode whatever sort of positive interaction you can, even if it's just like feeling good at it. Just look at your screen and say, I appreciate you. And that's all I need. And a thumbs up. But like mostly the appreciation thing. Anyway, that's going to do it for me. Thank you very much for watching, listening, however it is you consume this podcast. Be sure to tune in next week for month 34. And always try to remember, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.